Really interesting fight in our main event of Bellator 257. This one's a rematch, but this time it's for the title. We have Vadim Nemkov representing Russia, taking on Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis, and we talk about it all the time. This guy is one of the best wrestlers in MMA. Well, Phil Davis, low-key, a long time ago, you probably heard that fairly often. You probably heard that in his UFC tenure. And then he went over to Bellator, he captured the title, he lost it, he's been there, he's done that. And in the fight that he had against Vadim Nemkov, it was like absolute role reversal. It was like watching twins and taking it literally and thinking, geez, there's no way Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger are actually brothers. You watch that fight, and Phil Davis is a striker, and Vadim Nemkov's a wrestler, and I had to question my existence for a while.
I don't know if Phil Davis in between corners asked his coaches, like what Nate Diaz did with Conor McGregor, oh, he's a wrestler now? Because that's really how their fight went. When I think back of it in my mind, the clearest picture I have is Phil Davis landing far too many overhand rights, and that is kind of concerning. And this is a really interesting rematch because of what you said. Both guys had success in what would normally be considered the other guy's wheelhouse. Vadim Nemkov, great kickboxer, good at staying on the outside, can really flick his jab out there, can wrestle, can grapple, of course, if he has to, but normally his first game plan, well, much faster than most of these guys. They've got a great variety of kicks. Phil Davis, like taking guys down. But yeah, we really did see both guys kind of jump into the other guy's game, and it was interesting because for me, I think Vadim Nemkov can take a huge confidence boost from that first fight. I do think to a certain degree, he was a little bit hesitant on the feet, and you could see that because Phil Davis, when he was moving forward, not that he was constantly making Vadim Nemkov fake, and I always think of Chad Mendes when I say this, but fake down, come over top with the overhand, but just the forward pressure of Phil Davis was making Nemkov question, okay, is he either going to shoot for a takedown or start to strike? And at least the beginning of that fight, Phil Davis was having some really good success. And also, I'd be completely honest, I probably think Nemkov should be the favorite in this whole tournament. I thought Phil Davis beat him in the first fight. I did think Phil Davis won 2 rounds to 1. Bit of a hot take, maybe, but it was a very close fight. So Phil Davis, I think he's going to be confident because, okay, well, I just fought this great striker. He knocked out Ryan Bader. He's supposed to be the next Fedor. I did pretty well in the kickboxing department. And for Nemkov, I don't think you have to be as worried, especially when you're on the back foot against someone like Phil Davis. Because the weird thing about Phil Davis, he's such a good wrestler, and he's not a bad striker by any means, but he doesn't have that high of an output. So if you are on the back foot, more likely than not, he will shoot for the takedown. He's not the type of guy who he's going to really pump his jab, pitter-patter a little bit on the outside. Yes, he does have those skills. Of course, we're talking about a guy who was a world champion at one point, but Phil Davis's bread and butter is, I'm going to try to get close to you, I'm going to get you up against the cage, take you down. Now, the thing about Phil Davis that a lot of people don't realize is he has a great leg kicking game of his own, and yes, I'm sure you'll bring it up, his beautiful head kick win, but Phil Davis's leg kicks are really good, and it's something that if he would go to them earlier on in fights, I do think it would really open up his wrestling as the fight progressed. Could you imagine if you had a Phil Davis who, yes, he always had the pressure, you know he's got the cardio, that's another thing you never have to worry about either one of these guys. What if he could just incorporate a few more leg kicks and really start to make his opponent think that way? Because I really do think, as underwhelming as Phil Davis has looked in his last couple performances, this is the type of fight that A, he can really get up for, and stylistically, Phil Davis is a bit of a bad matchup for Vadim Nemkov.
It's funny because if Phil Davis had those, he would have been a UFC champion. The weird thing about Phil Davis is as his career's gone on, he's gotten better. Like, yes. I really like the Phil Davis that we have here now than we did 10 years ago, let's say. So it's really interesting to see how it's gone for Davis. He was one of those original UFC guys that made the jump over, became a champ. And if you look at his 5 on in, the one loss to Nemkov about 2.5 years ago, then he beat Liam McGarry, Carl Albrechtsen, and Lyoto Machida's last time out. And for Vadim Nemkov, this is where it gets weird. You look at the 2 losses, well, one's to a future UFC main eventer in Yuri Prohashka, and then the other one, Carl Albrechtsen. Both of these guys fought Albrechtsen, one won, one lost. The really weird thing, Carl Albrechtsen's fighting on the undercard of this card tomorrow, and the other one is the fact that Vadim Nemkov's brother Victor is going to be on this one, his older brother. So it's going to be weird to see how all of that plays out. But for Vadim Nemkov, is this one of those like city kickboxings? Uh-oh, my teammate lost, yikes. Or is it like Robert Whittaker? I need to see Jacob Malkoun lose before I can have a good performance.
I think maybe that is the case. I hope it's not. I hope him and his brother get along better than that.
And maybe Malkoun gets a win against Abdulrazak Al-Hassan this weekend.
That could very well happen. But it's the weird thing for Carl Albrechtsen too, because you see what he was able to do back in Ryzen, and what kind of a world beater he was, then you look at his performances in Bellator, or his performance, I should say, he looked terrible against Phil Davis. He really did. And I was super excited for Albertson. He beat Prohashka. He beat Nemkov. Well, goodness, if you're good enough to beat those guys, then you can probably beat Phil Davis. And then he proceeded to get exhausted really fast and get taken down a bunch. So I don't know if you can really take the Albertson fight too much and incorporate that into this one, because I do think we are dealing with a very new fighter in Vadim Nemkov. And what you said about Phil Davis, I think that holds true for Nemkov too. We're seeing a fighter who, although yes, he is the champ right now, he is still getting better fight in, fight out. And that's the cool thing about Nemkov, because the other neat thing too, Nemkov's a fighter who is a lot faster than most other guys at 205. And with 205, that's kind of the bridge between, you have the fast fighters at 205, or at 185, sorry, and you have the slower guys at heavyweight. Vadim Nemkov really does move like a middleweight. Just physically, he matches up so well with these light heavyweights, and that's the cool thing about his game. He can stand at a long range because he is so fast at getting in and out, and he has such good takedown defense that it really is hard for his opponents to get a good read on him.
For Vadim Nemkov, the 5-on-in, actually a lot more spread out than the older fighter. His first fight, a knockout win over a current UFC heavyweight, Felipe Lins. He beat him. The real coming out party was the Liam McGarry fight, where he just kicked his knee, and it looked like a horse's knee. It was disgusting and huge. He beats Phil Davis by split. Again, like you said, very close fight. He beats a former middleweight champ, Rafael Carvalho, and looked great. And then he beats Ryan Bader. And that was a weird fight for a lot of people. Because for Vadim Nemkov, you talk, again, to me, the coming out party was McGarry. For Nemkov to win the title, holy smokes. You just won over a big section of fans. And he's a guy that trains out of Stary Oskol. The pictures are out there. Him and Fedor Emelianenko. He even wears the t-shirt for Russian Northern Exploration. Neat. Not as neat if you're Canadian, but neat. But we look at this, Matt, and Nemkov Davis 2. Do you expect it to go like Nemkov Davis 1?
I don't. I do think we are going to get a very different fight in this. Now, again, I'll be very honest. I thought Phil Davis won their first fight, and it wasn't that long ago. But my issue is, Phil Davis, just as his style, is somewhat tentative. If you are moving forwards on him, he will kind of wait, at least when it comes to the striking department. Now, Phil Davis has this kind of, I don't want to say cool thing in his game plan, but you know, you see Tyron Woodley just back up to the cage and not really do much about it. When Phil Davis gets backed up to the cage, he does have a really good sense of, okay, I can go left, I can go right, or I can shoot forward and take you down. And when he shoots forward and takes you down, Phil Davis, just as a wrestler moving forward, is just so hard to deal with, because he does have some of those finesse-esque grappling, or at least in his wrestling. He has the single legs. He can go to a trip. He can go and just run the pipe. But he can just power double leg guys at the end of the day, and that's the great thing about Phil Davis' style. But if you do look at their first fight, look at what Vadim Nemkov could take from the first fight. Every grappling exchange, I at least got out on par with Phil Davis for the most part. And that's what he's supposed to be all that good in. If Nemkov was a little bit hesitant in that first fight because he was worried about the wrestling of Phil Davis, I don't think he's going to have that same issue in this fight. I do think we're going to see a much more comfortable Vadim Nemkov. And I do think the term championship confidence really does matter. And I do think for Vadim Nemkov, maybe even he had to win that title against Ryan Bader to be like, okay, I can fight these guys in Bellator at the top of the league. Because there's a big jump between Liam McGarry, although he was a champ, and Phil Davis. That's a big jump in competition. So now that he has finally beat, three former champions, and then Brian Bader to win the title, I just think Vadim Nemkov, he realizes that, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be in the Bellator tournament, and I do think he'll be the one moving on to the next fight.
And for Vadim Nemkov, this one is second 5-round fight. You saw what happened in the first 5-round fight he had against Bader. Holy smokes. For Vadim Nemkov, open minus 350 favorite. He's now minus 207. Now, the line jumped from 350 to 149, and since then it has gone down again for your champion. For Phil Davis, line open plus 275. He's now at a plus 166. And if we have a look at the Tapology votes, there's a fair amount of them. 861, 87% Nemkov, 53% by decision. Well, he hasn't won in the Bellator cage in 5 rounds, and 42% by knockout. The 13% that have Davis, 60% by decision. And like you said, I mean, whether you saw the first fight for Davis or Nemkov, this one's going to be a lot more interesting again. I like the improvements that Nemkov has made, and you look at the guys that he's fought, holy smokes, and that doesn't take anything away from Phil Davis. You want to talk strength of schedule? Davis has been fighting the harder guys for a very long time, but for Vadim Nemkov to learn from those 2 losses, to just continue to win and finish certain fights emphatically, I really do like that. I like Nemkov in this fight. But listen, I love this. It's a great rematch, and the winner of this fight will go on to fight the winner of Yoel Romero and Rumble Johnson.
What a fight.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for this whole tournament. I love Bellator tournaments. I really do. I might be in the minority. I hope everyone really likes the tournaments too, but I love what they're doing over there. I understand that, yes, some of these guys are former UFC fighters, but they're giving you the matchups that you want from the get-go, and I think that's the really important thing for tournament settings. So I'm really excited for this tournament, no matter who ends up winning, but yeah, I like Nemkov in this.
Big time fight. We're both going with an and still from Michael C. Williams, the voice at the end of it, and Matt, holy smokes, great fights. We've got Yagshimuradov taking on Anderson, and if you missed it, you can go back, or maybe you don't want to. Jake Paul and Ben Askren. Matt, I love it. Let's continue on with the show, and as we always say, let's get into it.